Hello, everybody. It is your professor, Rocco, your boy, coming at you once again with another Age of Sigmar video. In this Rocco responds, because we're trademarking that son of a gun, I'm going to be talking about probably my favorite army, Don't Tell My Living Cities, or my Stormcast, because we all about them wet elves here, folks. I love them. I think they're neat. They remind me of. Also, I got a new Mandalorian shirt, so what up? I wanted to wear it. They remind me oddly of my Wood Elves, and people are still confused if they're good, just like they're confused if Fire Slayers are bad. Because it turns out Fire Slayers are actually good, and the Deepkin are. No, they're not actually bad. They're good. They're okay. They're okay. So this is responding to some viewer questions, comments from different discords that I'm in, people asking, hey, is your Leviadon worth 500 points, really? And then I tell them to get that Shelly baby girl slander out their mouths. So, jumping into the topic here, after I say, remember to like this video, drop questions in the chat for me to answer with these different Rocco responds, because we're all about answering viewer questions here. And it gets to the point where some of these questions we answer really well, and everyone's like, "Oh, cool, you answered it. That's great." And they'll leave like "nice video," or I'll say in the comments, reply with the code word if you watch the whole thing. And the code word is Shelly. Haven't done that in a while, but let's see how many Shellys we can get. And I do little YouTuber things like that, and then no one puts a question for a minute, and I'm like, "Okay, cool. Guess we're just making up content as we go." So if you want your questions answered, like in our previous videos about the Cruel Boys, leave a comment. But back to my beloved wet elves. Who the poor, mostly soulless, go out on raids. Man, my Deepkin. It's funny because I'm not known for playing them competitively. I'm known more for my cities. And I'm known for my love of wood elves, even though, funnily enough, I don't have a lot of wanderer models anymore. Stuff that like I've converted stuff and done things, but to me, Deepkin scratch that itch of like an anti-hero elven faction that just causes chaos and destruction for their own people's survival. And how I play the army works for me with what I want to do. And when I explain it at the end of this, I'll show a list after I do my little rant. We're gonna cut to that, and I'll have a whole thing up. But for me, the Deepkin book, going from a 1.0 book to a third edition book, I like what they did. They modernized a lot of it. Morsar eels are still good. Their output is really similar to what it always was. What the Deepkin lost were rerolls and being able to give +1 to wound from the aspect of the storm on everything. Was it oppressive? Yes. Was most of the army hitting on twos, rerolling ones, wounding on twos, rerolling ones? Yes. No, that was it. That was beautiful. You didn't have a lot of models. They moved really quick and they killed everything. Because really what it was the Deepkin always put their damage out. It was on your opponents to make the armor saves. We weren't a magic focused army. We didn't play in that, which is weird because like the lore, they learned straight from Teclis before the Lumineth Realm Lords did. And you saw how they turned out as a magic faction. You would think the Deepkin would be magical, but they use all their magic in the lore to keep all the sea creatures breathing. So I guess they don't have enough for battle. And to showcase that, they cut the spells by a bit. They're good. It's not a bad spell lore. And they cut the artifacts a lot. But really what we lost in like the traditional flip tide list of being able to have all the rerolls, manipulate the tides, always have run and there was a lot of jank in the first codex, battletome, whatever you want to call it. And I think that where we are is okay. Now internal balance is the best it's ever been between sharks and Namarti and the eels. I think the defensive eels are a little expensive. They went up from 155 to 195, like the Morsar. These are the Schlein eels, the defensive eels here, because no one knows them by the real name, so you just usually shorthand offensive, defensive. They got straight up ethereal as their rule, and then on the charge they can be a 3-up save instead of a 4-up. There was a time you could make them a 2-up save reliably, and that was scary and stupid. So they're brought back to Earth. I like the eel changes. The eel profile used to be very split up. There was only like one attack that was D3 damage, no rend, and then you had D3 tail slaps per eel. Now it's a better eel profile. And generally the defensive eel riders even got a rend for their sword attacks, and they're just still a bucket of attacks, which is really nice. Um, and for each buff or retooling to be okay and have modern wording, for all of the units in the army, they then up the price. So it's like the unit got better, but then it got slightly more expensive. So you have to have less stuff in the army, and that's okay. Just because the army got a little more elite, lost some rerolls, lost a couple of buffs, you still get the raw damage. And now we have some different sub factions giving out different units as conditional battle line, like the turtles or the sharks. And if you know me from Tabletop Simulator, where I've picked up Deepkin and have had a lot of success in different tournaments and competitive settings, and even in narrative events with them, um, even in person actually at Shorehammer, I took Deepkin. I took 1,500 points of Deepkin, and I went pretty even with the guy that won the tournament there. A buddy of mine named Scooter, who took his Iron Jaws. Deepkin are not, and I got fifth, which is still pretty good, out of a big field. But Deepkin aren't Iron Jaws with the raw damage anymore. They're a little more techy. They're a little more delicate to play, especially because they've become even more elite. Like before, I would win my games as soon as high tide hit. I'd have my whole army. I'd just go and hit everybody, shoot them dead, and be done. Now it's like I'd have my turtle, a shark, and a foot hero, because the other like 1,400 points of my army are just dead from all the fighting and trying to hold objectives and moving around. So now you have to play it smarter, which I like. It fits my play style. And when I say that this army reminds me of like my wood elves back in the day in fantasy, like for me it was fifth and sixth edition. I don't know what happened with eighth with that new book. That's They're like Marathi. That's weird to me. So let me show you what army I'm running, and then we'll get back to talking. Welcome back, students. That's the whole thing here. Our whole thing is that I'm the professor, you're the students. If we needed a recap. So let me walk you through the list I've been playing. I'm 5 wins and a minor loss with this so far. And I've played variants of this at 1,500 as well, where it's just no turtle. But this is my Futan list. I've stopped being a believer in Dom Hain only because I don't own enough thralls to make Dom Hain work for me how I'd want it to. I only own the 20. But for other people, Dom Hain's great. But for me, I'm on the Futan side. Sometimes this could be a Nautilus list, in all honesty. But I own a bunch of sharks, so I'm gonna play a bunch of sharks and have a fun time doing it. So Futan, what it does is we get the Bloodthirsty Shiver ability on the Alapexes, and we get Alapexes as battle line. What that means is I pick one of my Alapexes in the combat phase, and for each 6 to hit on the jaw attacks, it explodes into an extra hit. If they are close to a friendly Alapex in that same shiver, it explodes into 2 hits. Now, I can tell you, out of 6 games, I've only gotten it to explode nicely once. And when it did, it was freaking awesome, and I'm hooked. It's like the Kraith where you're trying to roll to see if you get to fight twice, or Night Haunt if you get a Night Haunt charge. It's just I've got that slot machine Timmy bit going on in me here, and I just want to see something crazy happen. But from the top here, my leader is an Achillean King, and if you've been following along with some of my narrative stuff, I usually name it the aspirant of is Ivisar City, because I was doing a bunch of stuff for the Animosity campaign last year. Looking forward to running this out again. Um, as Deepkin, but my king here is my general. We've got the bladed polearm. It's got 3 attacks, 3's to hit, 2's to wound, but he's got an aura to give the riders that are Achillean units. So it's like the Shark Riders, the Achillean King, the people on top of the Leviadon, the Morsar Guard with the spears, not their eels, +1 to hit. So functionally, he's 2's to hit, 2's to wound. With a pole arm on the charge, it's -3 rend 3 damage. We've got the command trait Unstoppable Fury, where you get +2 attacks to the unit. I've been doing it just the rider because normally traits don't affect the mount. But you get 2 attacks to the rider's attacks for each enemy unit they're within 3 of, and it's very easy to get the king into 2 units. So you have 7 of the pole arm attacks. I've probably in 6 games I've gone past his pole arm once on the war scroll because whatever he goes to kill, it just dies. Then also you always have it's a sword of Falchion. And then the mount's really nice too. And I gave him the artifact, the armor of the Sithai. It's a fantasy word, so if I pronounced it wrong, I'm sorry. Uh, where 6's to hit him that normally would be like exploding hits, like the Bloodthirsty Shiver ability, have no effect. They don't explode. They don't do a mortal wound on a 6 to hit. None of that. So, he could be very good at stopping a Lumineth Archer or the Daughters of Cain Bow Snakes. Or Slanesh melee explosions if you really want to pile it on Slanesh a little bit more. Good defensive ability for that. And I've got a Tidecaster. It's my backup hero, Astra of Atriamento, who used to always be my general. Because in the old book, he had an ability to flip the tides. In Futan, you had some janky combos with it, but it's not as good because you truly just go from the first battle round where everyone's in cover for your army. The second battle round, you can run and charge or run and shoot. The third battle round is always strikes first. Fourth battle round is retreat and charge, and fifth battle round's in cover. That's the normal tides here for Deepkin. Now, if you do the flip tide thing, it's a command trait on the Tidecaster, and it's you retreat and charge first turn, then everybody fights first, and then run and charge, and then cover, and then retreat and charge again. And it's one of those things where if you're in a melee focused meta, that's great, because especially if like Iron Jaws are gonna go and take you out, and they're gonna alpha you first turn, cool, retreat and charge. And to have that in your options is great. But I like the Achillean King to be a murder machine. And also he has just a straight up ability once per game where you can pick D3 units. I believe it's wholly within 9 of him, and they get to always strike first as if it was high tide. And you get some jank with that because Unstoppable Fury, I believe, also only happens at high tide. And the reason why I just said straight up it just happens is because Battle Round 1, he's not fighting. Battle Round 2, I'm popping the ability in my charge phase, and he's just going to murder everybody. And then Battle Round 3, I'm always striking first again, so he's going to get the ability again. And it's really nice. And for my spell, I used to love old Arcane Corrasion, which is like a Mortal Wound artillery piece kind of spell from my Tidecaster. They changed it to mess with rend instead of doing damage. So now I'm taking a utility spell, Steed of Tides. It's a teleport for heroes that are not on monsters. And it's just a utility thing where I'm so elite and I know I'm gonna kill a bunch of stuff. But I also know my king's probably gonna die. All my Namarti are gonna die, a couple Alapexes are gonna die, but they're gonna take a bunch of stuff out. And I'm hoping to grind down my opponent enough that a late game cast of that will be able to teleport her onto an objective. And also in the book, as much as people hate like army specific battle tactics, there's one where Isharan heroes, these foot elves that aren't the Achillean warrior caste, take an objective in enemy territory. This is a way for me to try to score that. So just it gives me options. Is it guaranteed? No. And if you watched my video on battle tactics, you generally want the guaranteed ones. But, it gives me a chance if things get desperate. And sometimes you need to pull that lever when things go sideways. And also, with how the new spells are, I really like her War Scroll spell, which is do D3 mortal wounds and make the enemy neg1 to hit. It's the old, because in the last book it was like a delayed thing, like it's Riptide. It was like you made them neg1 to hit, and then the next hero phase of yours they take D3 mortal wounds. Everyone forgot to put the D3 mortal wounds on people, so they cleaned that up, and I like the Tidecaster. Also, the rituals for the Deepkin got changed. Before it was your rolled 2 dice, you tried to hit like a 10. There were ways to buff it, but you never did. And it was like a really complicated way of getting like a prayer or a spell where it was like the enemy can't benefit from cover, or they can't fly, which sometimes is really useful. Or you buffed an Eidolon, which when I was running the aspect of the sea a lot was amazing. But now they're better in that I just get 2 once per game abilities depending on what ability that I'm in for my tides table. I really like because the 4 of them are in the first battle round. You can't for the turn where because you can flip the tides. The battle round where your whole army counts as being in cover. You could also make it so that your army cannot be shot. Your Deepkin models in your army cannot be shot unless they're within 12 inches of the enemy unit that's trying to shoot them. And the Deepkin did keep the ability where you have to model by model shoot the nearest Deepkin model, but you can always shoot allies, which is nice. Um, but this rule of like you go into a shooting army, and again, death to the bow snakes, death to the long strikes, make KO have to come up close, because if anyone wants to put their good shooting unit within 12 inches of my lines, on my turn they're gonna get run over. It's a nice defensive thing to pick. Battle round 2, where generally it's the run and charge or run and shoot turn. Again, unless you flip the tides, but let's not confuse ourselves here. So the run and charge or run and shoot battle round, you get +1 to your runs and charges, which is again amazing, and it can really set up some clutch combats, especially with a redeploy being around here. And one thing that I like with this list is like I have 3 single sharks. So if I can surround a unit so that it can't really redeploy to anywhere effective, and I'll always have some sharks around, and I'll be able to get a charge in with someone, because it'll probably be a 3-inch charge even with the +1. I can't fail it. The third battle round is Namarti. When you do the always strikes first, Namarti units get a 5-up ward save. I was sleeping on this for a bit, but because I always like the shoot one and the +1 to charge one, but when they're just trying to come into my Reavers who aren't good at combat, they're great at shooting but bad at combat. This is just such an annoying way to keep your army around. And even the thralls, I only brought a 10. They're really like a screen in this army, but they can be so durable if you stack the right stuff on it, and that's just another good tool to have. Battle round 4 with the retreat and charge, generally retreat and charge, is you can do mortal wounds on the way out on a 4-up. You get D3 mortal wounds per unit that does that. Again, I've found, because the games have been so bloody, and really this list is missing 2 units of defensive eels and a unit of thralls for how I used to run it. And the aspect of the storm is swapped out with an Achillean king. Like, my old list just got massacred here. And yes, you could say I could take out the 2 units of Aetherwings and make another unit of thralls, but it's just so points hungry. I need cheap screens. And with this tech, the Tidecaster has a special rule where you can pick 2 of these rituals. Normally, you can only pick 1. Lotan's actually really nice in the army now, and he lets you pick 1 even if you didn't pick it before. But it just gives me flexibility of the Tidecaster. My battle line, again, is actually the Bloodthirsty Shiver of Sharks and also the Thralls and the Reavers. The Thralls are the melee Nomardi that have 2-inch reach finally, so a unit of 10 of them can fight in 2 ranks and just tear things up. Nomardi Reavers is a 20 block of archers that pairs with my turtle. The turtle, because I'm on Thralls, I'll discuss the turtle. The Achillean Leviadon, my beloved Shelly baby girl, has a mount trait because you can give a mount trait to the first Achillean king and Leviadon. His mount trait is a -1 to hit aura off of 3 inches of him. So if you're in combat with him, even if you're not trying to fight him, you're -1 to hit. The Leviadon is Reverberating Carapace, which is an extra 3 inches to the aura range of the Leviadon's Void Drum ability. Now, the Void Drum, because it's a 500-point model, we got a lot of rules on this girl. It's +1 to save for Deepkin units wholly within the Void Drum aura, and also +1 to hit for Nomardi units that are targeting enemies wholly within the Void Drum aura, because they want to protect Shelly baby girl because she's amazing. So Nomardi Reavers get +1 to hit if they're shooting an enemy within 9 inches of them. And you're like, okay, that's cool. Why do you need the Leviadon aura? Well, on an Unleash Hell, which is normally -1 to be hit, and you've got a +2 to hit, you're still going to end up at the end of the day with your +1 to hit. So you'll be unleashing hell on 2s to hit and 3s to wound. And in the charge phase, your opponent cannot spend a command point for all-out defense. That's only in the shooting phase and combat phases. So if your opponent isn't careful or can't save stack or would like to save stack, that's just a tool that they're not going to get, and you're still going to apply from 20 Reavers 40 shots at 2s to hit, 3s to wound. That's going to be nasty. And I've had units. I've killed mega bosses on foot. I've messed up mega bosses on maw crushers. I've killed so much stuff. Blood Knights, I messed up because they went from a 3-up save to a 4-up because they can't negate stuff. It's just delicious, and to me, the Nomardi Reavers play like how I remember Gladeguard of masked archer shots of my Wood Elves back in the day. My Tidecaster reminds me of like a supportive Spellsinger. The Nomardi Thralls remind me of War Dancers, especially because of like their different forms they do, like depending on the enemies they go into, because if they go into hordes, they get a horde clearing ability where they get an extra attack. If they go into something with 3 wounds or more, they get an extra damage on their attacks. With the Achillean Thrallmaster, you get other abilities that just make them so cool. And the Alapexes kind of remind me of Warhawk Riders, where they fly around everywhere. They've got great range with their shooting. I love giving them the harpoons. And they do decent combat I mean, these do way better combat damage than I ever remember a Warhawk Rider doing back in the day. So it's just really cool. And the Aether Wings are there as screens. And back to the Leviadon, because we've talked about how it... So my whole army basically would be +1 to save from the Leviadon. The first battle round, again, I'm in cover. For everything in my army can be in cover, but the Leviadon, because it's got too many wounds, but it's already a 2-up save, so that's a great thing. The Leviadon is a weapons platform with 8 harpoon shots doing D3 damage each. Is amazing in combat, great at taking out monsters with the bite attack. If you get a 6 to hit, you do 6 mortal wounds to a monster. And my favorite thing is Shelly Baby Girl is a totem. And people are sleeping on the totem keyword. What that means is Shelly gives out an 18-inch aura to issue commands and command abilities. Shelly can give herself all-out defense and keep her 2-up save and start save stacking. Shelly could give herself all-out attack. Shelly can reroll a charge roll to herself. Deepkin armies generally don't have a lot of heroes, and she covers a lot of ground with that. And it's just so many rules and so many extra add-ons. I get why she's 500 points. I think I think that's still expensive. But you've got to balance in Nautilus. She has the monstrous rampage where she affects herself to give herself more rend on her bites and her great damage for fin attacks. And Shelly all of a sudden becomes even more of a terror. And that's why I'm saying this list could play in both factions. I've just been liking the Sharks because I went hold the line for my grand strategy, where I have to have a battle line unit alive at the end of the game. And 3 Sharks as extra battle line is a bit better than the 2 units of Namarti and a turtle doing it. Just gives me more of an option. And those Aether Wings are just there to be screens and cheap bodies. I have 2 battalions. I've got a battle regiment, which is I got a hunters of the Heartland battalion, so no monstrous actions on my Namarti, which is great because they're 1 wound each, and a stomp can really mess them up. Then everything else is in a battle regiment. So nice 3 drops. I generally drop a unit of Namarti Thralls first, is my whole strategy here. And I try to pair them with the Deepkin boat. I have my boat in 2 halves, and it gives out a ward save again to Deepkin units that are not mounted. So I'll have my Thralls on like a flank, where they'll be covered by the turtle buff, the boat buff of a 5-up ward, and that first battle round they're in cover. So they're going to be a 4-up save, and they're also a Hunters battalion, so they could issue an all-out defense to themselves if they want. They could be a 4-up save, ignoring 2 rend, and have a 5-up ward save after, and just become absurdly tanky for no good reason. And then I've got a unit of Aether Wings out front, a unit of Aether Wings to my other flank, and then I layer my sharks so that if a unit of Aether Wings die, they're shooting a shark. And they're single sharks, who again will be at +2 to their save functionally. So they'll be a 3-up, ignoring Rend 1, between the turtle with the very large aura and my innate ability here, which is why I don't care about flipping the tides. If someone's coming into me, I'm probably ignoring all their Rend. And then on my turn, they're in shooting range for my Reavers and my Alapexes, all with the Harpoon launchers doing D3 damage, the Turtle doing D3 damage, and I can just aggress from there. And it's all the shooting I'd ever want in an army, and it's all the melee I'd ever want in an army. And most of the time, I'm just left with the Tidecaster, maybe a Shark, and the Turtle maybe being alive. And the games are so close and so fun, and I just love this army and feel like it got a side grade at the end of the day, where it's still an A- army. In the grand scale, like S being broken is heck, and then there's A, B, C, D, and then there's E, where like maybe Gloomspite gets R, unless you're taking Kragnos and a bunch of trolls and they're an A. It's weird. It's weird. Warhammer metas are weird. But in the grand scheme of things, Deepkin are very good into shooting in other elite armies. The Thralls are there to be my horde clearers, because they'll be 31 attacks if they go into 1 wound infantry. Probably at 2s to hit and 3s to wound. The Reavers are going to be 40 shots. Again, probably 2s to hit, 3s to wound. They're my horde clearing stuff. Or if something's like such a good save where it's probably going to be a 2-up save anyway, I'm going to make them roll those dice. I'm going to, by weight of dice alone, they're going to roll enough ones that I'm probably going to kill the thing. And then my Alapexes and the Turtle are there for monster hunting and elite units. My Achillean King just kills whatever it touches. And I have a great time with it. And it lets me score different battle tactics of, like, there's a Revenge of the Namarti, have a Namarti unit kill something. There's an Alapex special battle tactic in the book where an Alapex has to kill an 8 wound or higher model. Very doable. I've got the Leviadon that can score bonus points for me as a monster for different battle tactics, because shooting attacks and stomps from it still count as it killing something. Like if it's like kill the warlord, slay the warlord. If I shoot it dead, it still counts. If I stomp on the last model in a battle line unit to broken ranks something, that still counts. And I use my list building to be able to score enough bonus points to keep me in the game longer. And like my last game with this list was against 5 Magma Drops and a bunch of Volkites and a foot hero, the Rune Master, from friend of the channel, G Dead. And you know what? Shelly had to carry the game for me and kill 2 Magma Drops to the wound for me to barely win by I think like 2 points. And because I didn't even score my grand strategy because it was just so bloody. And it was just such an amazing game. And this kind of a list just will always keep you in the game because I've got so many threats. Everything is a hammer. Everything can be an anvil with the right buffs attached. You know, most of your army will probably be on a 4-up save. And if we've learned anything from our friends over in 40k land, those 4-up involve save Harlequins are terrorizing their meta at like a 90% win rate or something stupid when they took out mirror matches. It's probably 70, but still, it was stupidly high. And all of a sudden, this kind of plays in that same zone here because it's really fast, there's a lot of shooting, and there's really good combat, you know? And that's what I want in my army. And I'm a 3-drop. I don't care if I go first or second, because if I go first, the Aether Wings go up to cheaply get me an objective, right? And then they die. Cool. You killed 3 Aether Wings. Good on you. If my opponent goes first, guess what? They killed 3 Aether Wings and maybe a couple Thralls. Good for them. And then the rest of my army just fights. And, you know, that's why I love this faction in this army. It's how I want to play elves. It's they're killy. They have some tricks to be really resilient. And then the moment those tricks run out, everything just dies horrendously and it's hysterical. Like I played a game against KO with this list, and that first battle round, those Namarti Thralls survived a frigate, a bunch of Thunderers, and a bunch of like 6, maybe 9 engine riggers, the shootier balloon boys, and I lost 2 Thralls, right? Because I had my everyone was in cover, the turtle buff, and the ward save. And then immediately when I went to charge and they unleashed hell on me, I think I had 2 Thralls left because they left a lot of their buffs. And it didn't matter, they were -1 to hit. Everything went through and it hurt bad. And then all the Reavers died, and they actually died to the Endrin Master that has the once per game phosphorate bomblets. I think it was 9 or 10 mortal wounds, and then he charged in and murdered everybody. It was great. It was an amazing game that I won by the skin of my teeth. Because again, everything was dead, and that's something that is really nice. I'm good for a turn. I'm good for a battle round or two, and then it's just all killing and hoping you have something left. And that's really fun. And this is my ramblings on why I think Deepkin are good. And also that turtle is amazing. And she has just saved my bacon and has constantly killed 600 plus points of stuff. And if she's not doing that, she's empowering my Reavers to do that. And she's empowering my Thralls. And she's saving my Sharks. And keeping the king alive long enough to just murder blend something with his lance. And it's really cool to see. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for watching. I got really long-winded here on the list. But you know, I went over my tactics, why I did everything. I talked about my deployment, why I've got all the extra stuff that I do. And it's really fun and techy to see, and I want to take it to some local tournaments. They keep filling up. But hopefully I'll be able to do like a Rocco road trip soon again with with taking this list to a tournament because I love playing it and it's really fun. And with that, I want to say thank you for coming to class, and class dismissed. Bye.